Hi, welcome to another episode of Family Heritage Stories. I'm Doug Jessop. With me today, Donald Kaveny. So, Donald, we were teasing each other a little bit before, but you had a little stage fright, apparently, when you got into the military. Do tell.
And it stayed. But until over the years, though, of course, I became loquacious or more talkative, and I did a lot of training. So I got better and better as the years go on. But initially I was self-conscious, and so and I even so self-conscious I even forgot my name a couple times.
Uh-oh. Well, okay. So where did Donald grow up?
He is from Vermont.
Okay.
He was born in New Jersey, though. But in the 60s and the Cuban Missile Crisis, everybody left the metropolitan area and moved to New England.
Serious?
To Vermont, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so that's when I moved in 1960 from New Jersey to Vermont.
What city in Vermont did you grow up in?
Paulet.
Okay, where is that?
It is, I tell people to get there, go up from New York City to Lake George, take a right, and as soon as you get into Vermont, that's where
there it is. Okay, very cool. Now, you're wearing this vest, and we've got a group of gentlemen today, and you're part of a very special group. What does this vest represent?
Every man, a brotherhood. We were all stationed together in Vietnam, and about the same time, I was there for all of 1970, as was Jim, and some of the people were there before we got there, but our times overlapped. And most of us were pilots. There's Randy that you just talked to was a medic, one of the best. I mean, he was, and he's been kind of the glue that has held the group together over the years since we left.
So you were a pilot.
Yes.
What was the vehicle? What was the ship or plane or whatever? What would the term be for a helicopter in the military?
A Huey.
A Huey. Okay, so you flew a Huey. Those are big boys. Okay.
Not that big.
Yeah, well, they're interesting and intimidating, but yeah, okay. So tell me about, I got to wonder, because I have a stepfather that was a pilot. How in the world do you learn to fly a Huey? I mean, what's the process?
Well, they say they can teach a monkey how to fly a helicopter.
Yeah.
If you have the time.
Okay.
And when we start flight school, we have to solo within 10 hours, between 10 and 13 hours,
Whoa.
or you're out of the program. And so after 10 hours, your instructor gets out of the helicopter and you're on your own.
Wow.
And so it can be intimidating and a little
Yeah,
scary.
ever so slightly.
But it's and we were just talking about it in the back room, and how we all went through it, and it was interesting.
Had you ever had any flight experience before?
None whatsoever. I didn't plan on being a pilot. When I went to college, I went to a college that required 2 years of ROTC because of land grant college. And then in my junior year, I got out of it, but I was thinking or planning on going to medical school. So when I was at the end of my junior year, I got a letter that classified me as 1A. And I had no idea what that meant, except I was now going to be drafted and go to Vietnam. So in my all-knowing milieu that I was in, I took the letter to the ROTC department at college and said, I just got this letter. What do I do? He said, don't worry, Don, we'll take care of everything. And they did. And they said, we'll give you credit for the junior year of ROTC. You'll have to go to the summer camp, complete the senior year, and then you'll get a commission as a second lieutenant. And because you want to go to medical school, you'll be commissioned in the Medical Service Corps. And so I said, okay, that's good. So I went to Fort Sam Houston, where Medical Service Corps people, doctors, nurses, and medical supply people go. And the courses were boring as all military history and stuff, and it was dreadful. And so the friends that I was hanging around with were all avid aviators. They had gone to the flight program at their colleges, but now that they were at Fort Sam Houston and had received their commissions, they had to basically go through some more training, mental testing, physical testing, and whatever. And they were getting out of these classes that were boring. So I said, okay, I'm going too. So I started going with them. And then as it came time to almost graduate, I was really excited because I got orders to go to a place in North Carolina, and I loved North Carolina. So I said, this will be great. So I was planning on, that's what I was going to do, get out of my officer's basic, go to North Carolina, and then spend my 2 years in the service and ride off into the sunset. Well, just before I went, I found out that the assignment that I had was going to last for about 2 months, and then I was going to Vietnam.
Oh my!
As a battalion surgeon assistant, as a grunt.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, maybe I don't want to do this. So then I went back and said, well, now I really want to go to flight school. And so I ended up going to flight school as a result of that, because I felt that this was all of and this was in 68. So flight school would be a year, which would be all of 69. And then I'd have a year in Vietnam, and a lot could happen with the war at that time. And so that's what I went to flight school.
So describe your first day in Vietnam.
Ooh, which was interesting, because the day that I lost, you lose a day because you cross the international date line. The day that I lost going to Vietnam was Thanksgiving of 1969. And so that was and then we arrived in Vietnam, and it was ho-hum. It wasn't that exciting. I can't say a cosmopolitan area where we landed in Long Binh, but it was nice. And I was assigned to a medical detachment, which was the primary. Was the company, and they had detachments around Vietnam, and my orders were to go to I Corps, which is up in the mountains up on the border, and I knew I didn't want to do that. Well, while I was going through flight school, people would constantly come up to me and say, "Marcus, how are you doing?" And then they realized that I wasn't Marcus.
You have a doppelganger somewhere, huh?
Exactly. And so, as it turned out, I met Marcus on the flight going over to Vietnam.
No way.
And we're sitting and talking and whatever. And then they give us all this paperwork to fill out. And he was kind of like not paying attention. So I said, okay, just follow me and fill in like what I'm filling in. So I'm filling out my form. He keeps looking over, and I look over his. I said, Marcus, that's my birth date. And he goes, that's my birth date too.
Oh, wow.
And so anyway, and Marcus was one of these people, he was born to fly. He wanted to save lives. He wanted to really fly. And so he was going to the 159th in Cu Chi, and I was going to I Corps. And so I knew I didn't want to go to I-Corps because I figured it was dangerous.
Okay.
So I realized that if you don't ask for things, you're not going to get them.
Very true.
And so I talked to Marcus, and I said, Marcus, you want to go to I-Corps. You don't want to go to Kaveny.
Oh, my. Switching everything, huh?
And so he said, yeah. So I went to it just so happens I was on a flight with one of the administrators who made the assignments, and I said, my friend Marcus would rather go to I-Corps than 3 Corps where I was, than he was. So anyway, we changed and switched, and poor Marcus, he got shot up an awful lot. But he survived. He survived. He survived. And I ended up at the 159th with my band of brothers.
So what's DustOff mean to you?
What's really interesting is the way people talk about DustOff. Medevac is specific to the 1st Cav, and they have 50 cal machine guns on their doors. And people would say, well, what's the difference? And they said, well, 1st Cav has the guns, DustOff has the balls. Because we didn't have guns on the side. Because we picked up everybody. Good people, bad people, civilians. And we were specifically assigned to the 25th Infantry Division in Kaveny.
Do you remember the first time you went out and picked some patients up?
Yeah. And, well, the one that I remember the most is that, of course, when you get in the country, you get a weapon, a pistol, an M16, and whatever, and you're married to it. I mean, that's your live and die.
Right.
And my first time to go on a field standby to Tain In, I got in the aircraft, and we were just getting ready to go up, and they said, oh, there's some transfers from the hospital there in Kaveny to Saigon. So we had to go, we had to go back to the hospital, pick up these litter patients, take them to Saigon, and then go on to Tain In. Well, when I got to Tain In, my weapons were gone.
Oh dear.
I know. And so what had happened, what I surmised, is that the CIDGs, which were the mercenaries that fought for Vietnam, they owned their own weapons, and so they couldn't be separated from them. And we think that when we landed at the hospital in Saigon, that they thought my weapons, which were under my seat, belonged to the CIDG. And so they took them and put them back in the hospital. So when I got to Tain In, I didn't have a weapon. But then I thought that if I ever get shot down, I'm not going to have time to use them anyway. So I never replaced them. And thank goodness for Jim, Maura's husband, being supply officer. The next time we had a helicopter that got shot down, my weapons were on it because you could combat lost them without doing all the paperwork.
Okay.
So that's, yeah.
So did you end up ever getting a sidearm again, or did you just go the whole way?
Nope, I decided if I got shot down, I wouldn't get a chance to use it anyway.
Wow.
So
you're a pilot, and you're getting shot at, and these guys are getting loaded and everything. I mean, what's going through your mind as these guys are trying to get everybody on and off?
I was only shot at 6 times.
Only 6 times, okay.
And I was only hit a couple. But what I remembered the most when I'm flying is like when these tracers are going around me, I'm thinking out there. That's where I want to be. I don't want to be here. I want to be out there. And so that's basically what I would think of.
Yeah.
You know.
So there's also 1,000 missions, 3,000 rescued patch on your thing. Explain what that means.
Well, the missions were sorties. We were on call. We had 3 backups, or 3 people on duty. One was, the first up was the people that actually went into the field for emergency evacuation. Number 2 was the backup for the first, and number 3 was patient transfers from hospital to hospital. And so the missions were, when they were called in, you went to the field to pick up a sick and a wounded person.
What's something that people might not know about a Huey helicopter in a war zone with regard to DustOff?
They're the exact same helicopter, except that the DustOff has a red cross on it, and the Huey's a utility helicopter, and there can be a gunship with the 50 cals on the side. They can take supplies from one place to another, but we were specifically configured to pick up the sick and the wounded.
So how did your experience in the Vietnam War translate to later in life?
I consider myself a giving person, and I don't think I could have done anything else with a clear conscience if I didn't go over to Vietnam as a DustOff pilot, because I felt I was providing a service, a big service. And when I got out of I ended up spending almost 10 years in the service.
Wow.
Some of it flying, and some of it in hospital administration. And then when I got out, I ended up going into higher education, and specifically accreditation. So that's, and I think they're all very similar. When I got out of the Army, I was trying to figure out, I was in Washington, D.C., and said, well, what am I going to do now? And I met with some friends and some counselors, and they asked me what I had been doing. And they said, education and training sounds like your bailiwick. That's where you should be. And so that's what happened. And so I spent a number of years till I retired in accreditation in higher education.
Apparently there's a book that's being written with your unit, okay? And each one of you have a chapter.
I don't.
You don't? We need to fix that, guys, just saying.
No, and part of it is because, to me, it was a very personal experience. Mm-hmm. And not that I didn't want to share it with anybody, but it was my experience. Oh. And I'm really fortunate, because when I came home from Vietnam, the town that I came from had like 600 people or something. It was a crossroads, and with a general store right there, and a Max Market. And when I got home, there was a big sign, and that said "Welcome Home, Donnie." And went in, and everybody started coming in and said, "Oh, Don's home," and stuff. And at that time, the general store also sold beer and wine, and cold duck was the drink of choice and at that time. And so everybody, "Oh, Don's home, look, open another bottle of cold duck." And so that was my experience coming home, which was a lot different from other people's, because for whatever reason, they embraced it, and they missed me, and they gave, while I was there, they even sent me a Vermont flag, you know. And,
small town USA.
Exactly, which was good. I mean, it was nice. So my experience was good, and also just being in Vietnam, pilots, even though it can be dangerous, when we were through with our assignment, our mission, we had an air-conditioned hooch to come home to. And so, which is a lot different than anybody else. You know, granted, we were exposed to a lot of danger, but also when we came home, it was a nice experience. And people, the band of brothers type of thing, but also we were more connected to the medical facilities. So that was a whole different maybe too. I mean, the nurses and the doctors, they were our friends also, and so it was a lot different than people who did not have that to come home to. I had my brother-in-law. I took him to the bus to go to Vietnam. Well, he's now my brother-in-law. He wasn't then. But he went over to Vietnam and was in an armor battalion, and he was wounded and went to Hawaii, was repaired, and then sent back to Vietnam and whatever. And he came back to home after his stint in the Army, and that's all he talked about. Nam this, Nam that. And I told my friends, if I ever come back and start doing that, shoot me. Because I thought it was obnoxious. I mean, it was just Nam this and goop this. And I said, no, that's not me. And so for years, I wouldn't even talk about my experience for whatever reason. And I think that's part of why I didn't submit the chapter. Mm-hmm. I still felt it personal to me. You know, my experiences were my experience. Now I kind of wish I had, but I don't have any qualms.
You have kids?
None.
Okay.
I've got nothing. No dogs, no cats. My fish have died of old age, so
I can get you some more fish. So the thing that's interesting, so my show is called Jessop's Journal. This is my journal autograph book that I'm looking forward to you signing.
The mark?
Oh, there's all kinds of marks. Okay,
I thought there was a big mark.
Oh well, that's the other journal. Okay.
Oh,
okay, that's the one that's at home. But this is my autograph book, and I'm looking forward to having you autograph this. But to me, leather is kind of interesting because it has scars, it has patina, and so, Donald, how do you want to leave your mark?
Right now, you know, when you asked earlier, I said, well, gee, how do I want to leave it? And to me, it was difficult. He was a nice guy. He was a good guy. He was all his nieces and nephews loved him because they're all vying for inheritance. But anyway, it's nice. I really feel like I've made a contribution in not only in Vietnam in the service, but also in higher education. I really enjoyed my time. I have no regrets.
With another entry into Family Heritage Stories with Donald, I'm Doug Jessop.
What if you run the damn string?